N-Y-N-C-K. If you could please turn to exhibit number 33 that is in front of you.
Yes.
Let me know when you have that exhibit.
I have it.
Do you recommend, is this the Munich peer-reviewed article that you were just referring to?
Yes.
What I'd like you to do, Dr. Russell, is to point out where in this article there is the rooting of the pattern and pattern methodology, recognition methodology that you've been testifying to. Where is it located? And with the court's permission, I'd like you to read the specific sentences and paragraphs where that methodology is rooted in it.
Tell us first, because if it's a whole page, we're not going to do that.
It's not a whole page, Your Honor.
Let's just see where it is.
Okay. Okay. On page 298. The second paragraph on the left-hand side. Okay.
Your Honor, it's not going to be reading a whole page, it's just the portions of this. Is that acceptable
So
to the
you
court?
can read a portion of that paragraph, Doctor? Because what you're trying to do is convince me, right?
Understood.
These are in evidence. So
Yes.
could you tell me where it is, please?
Okay. So left-hand
Right, first
column.
paragraph, second paragraph. Where do
Second
you start?
paragraph. So it's part of the second, the third, and the fourth parts. So it says, dogs have some very specific dental and maxillofacial features. They have 42 teeth, 20 in the upper jaw, 22 in the lower jaw. Usually the mandibular dental arch is narrower and shorter than the maxillar, and the shape of the dental arches varies among the different breeds. There are natural gaps between the teeth that are attenuated or accentuated depending on the breed.
And then if you could skip to the next paragraph, because we want to follow the court's direction not to read everything,
Right.
just trying to focus on the key aspects. Is there something in the next paragraph that also supports it?
Okay, yes. Okay. The above features attribute to the characteristics of dog bites.
Can you tell us what that sentence means? And does that sentence have any relation to the concept of pattern recognition?
Yes, it does.
Explain how.
Okay. Well, so they're talking, well, first of all, the previous paragraph was talking about the dentition of the dogs and how there's some variation in the dentition. And then this next sentence says the above features attribute to or relate to or are relevant to the characteristics of what the dog bites would look like.
And then as you continue on in that paragraph, again, not reading every sentence, but is there another part of the paragraph that continues over on to the next page that also supports your testimony that this is talking about pattern recognition methodology?
Yes. So it goes on to say that the puncture wound, a round hole, is made by the canine tooth of either the upper or lower jaw on one side that serves as an anchorage, while the other teeth cut into the flesh, causing stretch lacerations in the process of biting, shaking, and tearing. This should be considered pathognomonic for dog bites, especially when accompanied by tissue defects and claw marks, the latter being narrow, superficial, linear abrasions arranged parallel to each other, 4 or 5 in number, and usually found in the vicinity of the bite. This pattern allows differential diagnosis with bites of other animals which are not accompanied by pulling and shaking, nor by the usage of of the prominent canines and with stab wounds caused by sharp instruments.
Does what you just read establish the pattern and the pattern recognition methodology for dog bites?
Object, number of grounds.
The objection, the objection sustained asked the question differently.
What do you conclude from the language you just read with regard to patterns and pattern recognition methodology?
Well, I conclude that patterns are important, and they are what I call highly representative, but they call pathognomonic, meaning that there is nothing else that causes those.
Let's focus on the word, people pronounce it differently,
Yeah.
pathognomonic. What does pathognomonic mean in medicine?
Pathognomonic, to me, I believe it means that you can make a diagnosis based on these factors that are present to the exclusion of any other diagnosis because they are so specific.
So we talked about on your direct, and it was raised on cross, the concept of a differential diagnosis, right?
Yes. Yes.
When you have pathognomonic features, is it required to even have a differential diagnosis?
Not really,
Why?
because the pathognomonic features mean that you have the entity or the condition that that is explained.
Does pathognomonic mean that the features themselves rule out other possibilities?
Yes, that's what I believe it means.
And is that how you interpret what the author is saying in this article?
Yes.
Please proceed lastly to the next two paragraphs, and then we can move on to the next study, I believe.
In conclusion, to identify a lesion as a dog bite wound, it should have ragged and irregular wound edges, show multiple parallel linear scratches or drying scuff abrasions, include a puncture wound and sometimes an avulsion with irregular borders resembling a dental arch print.
And could you please, as the last paragraph will focus on, read what you consider important in the next paragraph?
The shape of dog bite wounds depends on the size and breed of the dog and will differ whether or not the full dentition was used to produce them.
Let's stop there. What does it mean to you when the author says, and will differ whether or not the full dentition was used to produce them?
So what that means is that if the bite does not include the full, well, let me back up. What it means is the appearance of the bite will vary depending on whether or not all of the teeth impacted the skin or just some of the teeth impacted the skin.
Please read the next sentence.
Only in ideal circumstances will a complete impression of all frontal teeth be found, and often only a prominent canine impression can be seen.
Is what you just read relevant at all to what you analyzed with regard to the wounds of the decedent in this case?
Very relevant.
How?
Because many of those wounds on Mr. O'Keefe's arm were only partial bites. They did not have the complete dentition.
Do you recall Mr. Brennan saying various times that you have no support for your pattern recognition methodology?
Yes.
Is this support for your pattern recognition methodology?
Yes.
Is it direct support for the pattern recognition methodology you have applied in this case?
Yes.
Is there another article? You mentioned two. You mentioned Munich and Pollock. So let's turn to, and Your Honor, this will be the second and last article.
Okay.
Please turn to Exhibit 34. And is this the Pollock, P-O-L-L-A-K, study that you have mentioned multiple times in your testimony and that's in your report?
Yes.
Please, like we just did with the Munich article, please identify the portions of this study that support, you've testified, support your pattern recognition methodology.
Okay.
And let's
Well,
do
start in
a
the beginning.
seriatim from the beginning.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'll do
please.
from the beginning. So, the dog's front, so the first paragraph here.
Okay, the summary?
Yeah, this says summary, yes, summary. In the absence of her parents, a girl of 4 months was killed by a 2-year-old male Rottweiler dog belonging to the same family. The dog's front teeth marks of individual circular or scratch-like abrasions, as well as slit-like skin severances of the skin, arranged in curved lines. There seems to be a word or two missing.
No, you missed a word. That's
I
all.
did.
That's
Yes.
okay, go ahead.
Okay. The pattern of skin lesions largely corresponded to the anatomy of the dog's set of teeth.
Let's stop there. How does the sentence you just read, what's the key component of that sentence that supports your pattern recognition methodology?
That sentence, the pattern of skin lesions.
Now let's go down to the keywords. Is there anything in the keywords that supports and roots your opinion that you've given several times that there's in dog bite wounds on humans there's a pattern?
Yes, so there's about five or so keywords. One of them is injury pattern.
Why is there a section in many medical studies of key words?
So when you're researching, you can find the articles quickly.
And is there any importance to the use of key words when there is a study published?
Well, yes, because it's a key concept of the paper.
Please proceed to and I know it may take a little bit of time and with the court's permission, to the next section of this article that supports your opinion that there is a pattern to dog bite wounds on humans and that there's a pattern recognition methodology used to discern them.
Well, I think the next significant section would be 3.2,
And what is the title of that section?
morphology of dog bite injuries.
What does morphology mean in the medical community?
Basically means form.
And could it mean something in addition to form?
Form, pattern, appearance, yes.
So, with regard to morphology section, please identify the sections, the parts of the article under this section that you believe, that you have concluded support your opinion of both the existence of patterns and a pattern recognition methodology with respect to dog-inflicted wounds.
Well, I go to the second paragraph.
Please read that.
Okay. The bite mark on the skin is ideally a complete and congruent imprint of the front dental arch. Sometimes only the protruding canine teeth are imprinted. If the shorter incisors also leave an impression, smaller skin lesions, round pressure marks, or streaky glide marks can be found between the impact points of the canines. In practice, it is hardly expected that all 6 incisors of a jaw will act uniformly. A gap in the injury pattern can have several causes: oblique biting, curvature of the body surface, interposition of textiles.
What does that mean? I'm going to stop you. What is interposition of textiles in layperson speak, and how, if at all, is that relevant to this case?
It's clothing overlying the area that was bitten.
And was there clothing overlying the bite mark wounds of the deceased?
Yes.
And what clothing specifically was that?
It was a hoodie type sweater.
Please continue reading.
Okay. Interposition of textiles, different tooth lengths, tooth loss, form and positional anomalies of the teeth.
And keep reading, please.
On the next page,
Yes.
the spectrum of possible injury forms is extremely diverse. Depending on the type and intensity of local tissue damage, skin contusions with epithelial loss, linear abrasions, tears and/or crush wounds, as well as puncture-like lesions can be distinguished.
Thank you. So, do these studies directly or indirectly support your opinions in this case that there's both a pattern to dog bite wounds on humans and that there is a pattern recognition methodology to discern them?
They do.
And is it direct or indirect support, these studies?
I believe this is direct.
And do you believe it's robust, these studies, or do you believe there's equivocation with regard to pathognomonic features?
No, I think it's robust, and these articles are cited elsewhere.
And are these articles, particularly the Demunic article, is the citation ubiquitous in the medical literature, or is it sporadic? Are there a lot of citations to Demunic in the medical literature, or are there only a few?
There are quite a few.
And do you recall the book that Mr. Brennan showed to you earlier on in the hearing?
Yes.
Does that book cite to Demunic as support for a section in the book?
It does.
Now, there was confusion. You can put those studies to the side for now, Dr. Russell. Thank you. Now, there was some confusion on cross-examination regarding where these articles could be found. Some were looking for them in your CV. I'm sorry, Mr. Brennan.
All right, so I'll strike that part of it. Just go ahead without commentary and just ask the question, please.
Yes.
Redirect.
Sure. I will, Your Honor. Where are the references? Well, are the references to these articles in your CV, or are the references to these articles in your report?
In my report.
During cross-examination, it was stated that you, quote, suggested that you came to your pattern recognition skills because of communication difficulties or because people couldn't share with you or report to you the cause of the wound. Is that an accurate statement about how you develop your pattern recognition skills?
I don't know where that statement comes from.
I'm happy to provide it, or I could read
So
it.
let's strike that first part of it.
Okay.
And just ask the question, please. Again, this is redirect, it's not cross-examination.
Understood. Yes, understood. Thank you. Have you ever suggested that you came to pattern recognition skills because of communication difficulties or because people wouldn't share with you or report to you the cause of a wound?
No.
Would that be an accurate statement at all about how you develop pattern recognition skills?
No.
And why is that not accurate?
Because pattern recognition skills are, again, taught in various subjects in medical school. And I actually started even before medical school. But in medical school, they're taught in various subjects and in internship and residency. And that was long before I started interviewing patients, with the dog bites of unknown etiology.
Is pattern recognition common or uncommon in the practice of medicine?
Very common.
Can you please give some examples of pattern recognition and the use of pattern recognition methodology in the practice of medicine?
So I think she already did this before the break, right, Doctor?
I mentioned it earlier with pathology, looking at biopsies.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Rizzo. This is about you, and so you've heard it, and I'm going to move on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to move on to a different section. You have been asked on cross about whether in your emergency department experiences, well, let me rephrase that. In your emergency department experiences with dog-inflicted wounds, have you ever gone to see the dog in question?
No.
Do emergency medicine physicians need to go see the particular dog or any dog in question to determine whether a wound is from a dog as opposed to some other cause?
No.
Do you, Dr. Russell, need to go to the particular dog to determine whether a wound is from a dog?
No.
Have you ever heard of an emergency medicine physician needing to go visit a dog to evaluate and treat a wound from a dog?
No.
Is that a rational proposition?
I don't believe so.
There was much discussion. Well, let me strike this. You were asked a number of questions about whether your testimony here for this hearing and your statements in your report are different from what you testified to in June 18 and June 21 of 2024. What I'd like to do is to compare the two and go through some questions with regard to that. So, what I would like to do is to have you have Exhibit 35, which is the transcript of the December 12. Do you have that? It's a thick, it's the December 12, 2024. You should have that.
I do.
Okay. And what I would like you to do is to also have available Exhibits 35 and 36 and 37, because that's what we're going to do side-by-side comparisons. So, let's start out with the foundation for this. Do you have an opinion with regard to the nature and source of the wounds on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm?
Yes.
What is that opinion?
They're from dog bites, dog attack.
And do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
Now, at the June 2024 voir dire hearing, the claim is that you didn't say to a reasonable degree of medical certainty that the bites you looked at were a dog. So can you please go to tab 36, pages 1-30, line 13, to 1-31, line 1. Stop at 1-31, line 1. These were questions in response to what you were asked on direct by Mr. Jackson. And I would, with the court's permission, like you to read the question in the answer to what you actually testified to at that voir dire hearing. So please go to tab 36.
So can I see counsel at sidebar, please?
Yes. Can I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Russell, could you, first of all, do you recall in questions on cross the claim by Mr. Brennan, or the statement in his question by Mr. Brennan, that you did not express certainty in response to Judge Cannoni's question about the certitude of your opinion? Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
Do you recall, well, let's go and look exactly at what you said in response to the question that Mr. Brennan raised, that was raised by the judge. If you could turn to Exhibit 36. And if you could read page 1-51, lines 10 through 23. I'm sorry, bear with me a moment. Bear with me, I want to give you the correct citation. I want you to go to, did I say 37? I wanted to say 36. Did I say 36?
You said 36, but you said page 151. You might have meant page 131.
Right. That's what I want to go to, Your Honor, which I will. Okay. Bear with me a moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
This is going to be one of only two questions in this area.
You may have meant page 130. That's where we started before we came to sidebar.
Thank you, Your Honor. What I'm trying to do is to get to Your Honor's question. That's what I'm going to pull out.
My question was on page 151.
I'm sorry?
My question was on page 151.
150. Thank you, Your Honor.
151.
Thank you. Can you go to page 151 and read the questions from the court, Judge Cannoni, and what your answers were?
Yes, from line 10. The court. Question. I just have a couple of questions for you. I don't think I really heard you. So could you tell me again what your opinion is and to what degree you hold that opinion? Answer. Yes. These injuries in the arm are, my opinion is that they are the result of animal bites or scratches. Question. Do you know what kind of animal? Answer. Yes. Most likely dog. Large dog. And I'm very reasonable, very sure to, what's the word I want? Medical certainty. Very sure, high degree of medical certainty. Question. Reasonable degree of medical certainty? Answer. Yes, definitely. Question. Okay, and another question.
No, that's
it.
That's it. Yep. Now, to be fair and accurate, has your opinion that the wounds to the right arm of the decedent were caused by a large dog attack strengthened from June of 2024 until now?
They have.
Why?
Well, because between then and now, my opinions have been challenged. And as any good doctor would do, they go back and reevaluate what they base their opinions on. And I did that. I reevaluated. I looked at the pictures again, the evidence again. I looked at peer-reviewed studies, and I was convinced that I was correct.
And had you looked at, well, what caused you to go look at the peer-reviewed studies? What were you
yes. Well, so I looked at the peer review studies, and I periodically would do that throughout my whole career in terms of dog bites. But I looked at the peer review studies again because I was asked, why I didn't write a report, and so I was asked to write a report.
Were you asked to write a report before in June of 2024?
No.
But you were asked to write a report after June of 2024.
Correct.
Now let's go to is this what doctors and scientists do? Go back and analyze a matter, especially when maybe there's a challenge, another doctor is a question, there's a peer review process, whatever it is that something that's common or uncommon in the medical community?
That's very common.
I only have a few more questions, Your Honor. I'm just looking at them to conclude. On cross, you were asked about whether you were aware of or whether you saw a need to peer review your opinions and conclusions in this matter. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Was that necessary?
No.
Why not?
Because first of all, there was no question in my mind that these were from dog bites.
And are there any persons that you're aware of in the entire country who have experience with emergency medicine and forensic pathology that you could even send it to for a peer review?
No, and that was the other issue, is I wouldn't even know who to send it to because I don't know of anybody with such experience.
I am going to, let's assume hypothetically that Mr. Walsh has stated that these injuries do not photographically appear to be described as puncture bite wounds and thus are highly unlikely to be the result of an animal bite attack. The abrasions are unspecific. Abrasions occur in body moves over a blunt or rough surface such as a skin knee. Do you find that analysis sufficient to evaluate whether the bite wounds in this, the wounds from the right arm of the right arm of the decedent are from a dog or not?
No.
Why not?
Well, clearly that person, whoever wrote that, didn't even recognize the pattern. And so thus couldn't really even make that opinion and just didn't recognize the features.
In the hypothetical that I just gave you, do the facts that are used in any way support the conclusion that is stated?
I don't believe so.
You don't believe so, or can you answer whether they do or they don't? Do the facts stated in that hypothetical support the conclusion that is made in that statement?
Actually, they don't.
Assume the same person said a vehicle backing into O'Keefe is one of many possible causes of his death. though the absence of documented injuries of his torso, hips, and legs appear to be inconsistent with a vehicle impact of significant force to simultaneously shatter a rear taillight. Would you agree or disagree with that statement? Or the conclusion? Would you agree or disagree with the conclusion?
Would you please read it again?
Sure.
Sorry.
A vehicle backing into O'Keefe is one of many possible causes of his death, though the absence of documented injuries of his torso, hips, and legs appear to be inconsistent with a vehicle impact of significant force to simultaneously shatter a rear taillight. Do you agree or disagree with that statement?
I agree up until the point, the mention of the taillight.
But what is it that you agree with in that statement?
Well, I agree to the part that says that that it was insufficient to cause the injuries, the death of Mr. O'Keefe.
Now, aside from that hypothetical question, what is your opinion of whether a motor vehicle caused the injuries to the right arm of Mr. O'Keefe?
The motor vehicle did not cause.
And do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
Are you aware that only microscopic pieces of plastic were found in the hoodie sweatshirt of Mr. O'Keefe as opposed to, quote, littered, end quote, aspects?
I am.
Are you aware of any evidence of littering of pieces of plastic or glass in the hoodie of Mr. O'Keefe?
No.
Are you aware that there was pig DNA found on the decedent? Are you aware?
Not on the decedent.
On any aspects of the decedent's clothing?
Yes.
Do you know, from your experience, with regard to dog-inflicted wounds, your many emergency room evaluations and treatments of them, whether or in your knowledge of dogs and dog dentition in general, are you aware of whether dogs eat any type of food or treat that has pig in it?
I'm aware that the dogs, some dogs eat treats that have the pig chews and other kinds of chews. So yes, they do. Some dogs do eat things that contain pig.
Your Honor, just if you will, a point of information. I believe I'm done with my questions, and the reason why I say I believe I'm
Why
done.
don't you come to sidebar instead of having
Okay.
a discussion across the courtroom? right, so recross examination.
You need a moment? Okay.
I'm holding Mr. Brendan up. I just
That's
want to
okay.
move my stuff, and I'll be ready in a moment.
Okay.
Dr. Russell, Attorney Alisi, pardon me, asked you about Dr. Walsh's statement about the cause of injuries. Do you remember? He just
Yes.
asked you that?
Yeah.
What he didn't offer in the report is this, and let me know if you agree with it. Decedent John O'Keefe was documented to have craniocerebral injuries, including skull fractures of the optical skull and the right parietal bone with associated subdural and subarachnoid hemorrhages. These injuries of the scalp, skull, and brain are consistent with, among other things, a backwards fall, unobstructed, unprotected falls due to various reasons and known to result in serious craniocerebral injuries resulting in death. Other mechanisms of injury cannot be excluded. Do you agree with that?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow him to do it.
Do you agree with that part that you didn't hear of Mr. Walsh's opinion?
Yes.
The documented changes in color, swelling of soft tissue around the eyes are most consistent with the medical finding of periorbital ecchymosis, as documented in the autopsy report. Periorbital ecchymosis is a passive accumulation of blood around the eye secondary to the documented skull fractures. These findings are less consistent with and are not documented as contusions of the eyes. The 1 centimeter laceration of the right upper eyelid, laceration of the anterior right tongue, and abrasion of the anterior and left aspect of the nose are documented, considered nonspecific, and may have occurred to a variety of mechanisms. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. The 2 red contusions on the dorsal aspect of the right hand were documented. The hand injuries may represent an injury sustained during an unprotected fall in which the back of the hand impacts the ground. These hand injuries are nonspecific and may have resulted from impact of hand with any blunt object. Do you agree with that?
It's possible, but there are other mechanisms.
Okay. When you talked about those articles that Mr. Alisi had you read, there is nothing that details what pattern recognition analysis is, the specificity which you are looking for when you're looking for a wound, does it?
I disagree.
Okay. When you looked at that Exhibit 5, if you could pull that up, you said individually none of those wounds could you say to a reasonable degree of medical certainty were caused by a dog. It's only if you looked at them collectively.
Yes.
Okay. When you look at those collectively, it does not tell you the order in which the wounds were incurred, does it?
No.
It doesn't tell you if they're all incurred at the same time, does it?
They were occurred around the same time, I can tell you that.
Yes. But they don't tell you the order, the chronology, do they?
No.
No. In fact, when you look at the studies that you introduced with Mr. Alisi, let's talk about the Munich one very quickly. There's a chart, page 298. It talks about the things you would want to do to identify a wound. It talks about scene investigation, doesn't it, in the chart? Table 2.
That's a fatal case, though.
Scene investigation is something you would look for?
That's in a fatal case caused by a dog. The cause of death was the dog.
This whole thing, the whole excerpt is a fatal case that you're relying on for this pattern recognition analysis. This whole article is about a fatal case,
That's
isn't
what
it?
I'm saying.
Right. And in this fatal case that you're relying on to say this pattern recognition analysis, it points out scene investigation is the priority, doesn't it?
I think you misunderstand. The focus of that article is to identify the dog that caused the fatal injury.
Mm-hmm.
In this particular case, I don't believe any of those are fatal injury. That is not the purpose of the identification of those injuries.
Does the chart also say examination of the victim?
Excuse me?
Examination of the victim. Does it also say examination of the victim?
I don't have it in front of me anymore, but...
Well, you relied on it. You don't remember
Yes.
this?
I think we have it. We don't have it.
Oh, I do I have it? Oh, yeah, it's a minute. Okay.
Table 2,
Okay.
page 98, examination of the victim. You did not examine the victim, did you?
Table 2.
Yes,
No.
table 2, page 98. And the last part is examination of the...
I examined photos.
The last part is examination of the dog. You did not examine Chloe, did you?
No.
Okay, so the 3 things in the table it tells you to do, you didn't do any 3 of those, not one of them.
Those, again, the purpose of this article was about the fatal, the forensic approach to a fatal dog attack. We did not have a fatal dog attack here.
You didn't do any of those three things, did you?
No.
Okay. The shards in the sleeve, exactly where those wounds are, same area, same limb, right? The
That's what you
shards.
say.
How many shards were in that sweater?
Objection, Your Honor.
So, I'm sorry, you said that's what you say, Doctor? Is that what,
Yeah,
is that
and
what your
he
answer
said,
is?
Mr. Brennan said that the shards were in the exact same location as those wounds.
Okay,
And
let me
that's-
rephrase that. The shards in the right arm of the sweater, the shards from the taillight that was shattered,
Yes.
those shards, how many were there? How many
I
Microsoft?
believe there were only a couple.
Why do you believe there were only a couple? Where did you read that?
This is what I was told
This is you were told by who?
by defense.
Oh, so instead of looking at the actual criminalistics report, you simply rely on what they tell you to base your facts?
That's what I was told, yes.
Wouldn't it be more prudent to actually look at the criminalistics report and make your own determination objectively and medically rather than regurgitate a point of the defense?
Well, I was told, this morning you said that the sleeve was littered with glass. And I was told that it was not littered.
I see. Have you ever looked at that criminalistics report for
I'd be
yourself?
happy to do so now.
I'm asking if you've ever looked at it before you offer this opinion.
No.
No. If the glass shards were in that sweater in the arm, and we know glass can cause a hole in a sweater, in a fabric, can puncture it, and it can cause an abrasion to skin. Have you done any tests or studies to rule out that the broken taillight that was in the arm sleeve of Mr. O'Keefe, did you do any studies to rule out that it didn't cause those injuries?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow it.
The glass shards would not have caused all the round wounds in the sweater. Those holes. The defects in the sweater mostly were round. They were not slit-like defects that I would expect with glass or plastic.
You're telling us that a sharp piece of glass cannot cause a hole to a sweater.
No, I didn't say that. I said they would not, especially on multiple sites, the same exact type wound,
Well,
defect.
If the glass was shattered and the glass had a number of pointy edges, wouldn't you agree with me that can cause a number of punctures in somebody's arm if the glass went into the arm and then came out?
Yes, but they wouldn't look like that.
You don't have any past case or history to suggest what the glass shards would look like randomly when they hit somebody, do you?
That's incorrect. I have seen hundreds of motor vehicle accident victims who have been cut by glass. They don't look like that.
So from your perspective, the glass just remained dormant in the sweater but never protruded through the sweater and caused the abrasions. That's your opinion?
I didn't say
Your
that.
Honor, could we have a sidebar on this? Sure.
I have no further questions. I'm good. Dr. Russell, when I'm referring to these shards, and I've said glass shards in Mr. O'Keefe's sweater, a more accurate way to define it would be that these were plastic shards, the plastic covering of the taillight, not glass. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Dr. Russell, you are all set.
We're done?
We're done. You're done. We're not done, but you're done. You can step down, Doctor.
Thank
okay?
you.
If council really can keep your, Mr. Lessie, if council really can keep your arguments to 15 or 20 minutes, I'll give you 5 minutes to pull them together, 5 or 10 minutes to pull them together.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
I really
All right.
can't keep the arguments to 15.
All right, so I'll be back out at 3:15.
All rise, please.